Good morning. So, I got a couple things I got to do today. I got a number of things I got to do today. Partway through this, I'm going to have to take a break because in about 35 minutes, I need to go fold my dough. I'm making some bread today, and I'm making it via the technique where you pull it up and you stretch it and you fold it over itself every 45 minutes or so for a certain period of time. Anyway, it's resting upstairs, and what I need to do today is a little bit of tilling. So you can see, this is the garden, of course, and the beds all come down to this point, right to this log right here, which then sort of runs in a line over here to, I don't know if you can see it, our nectarine friend, Brennus persica. So what I need to do is fill in this last little gap. You can see I've made a triangle here. I'm gonna till that triangle, and we're gonna incorporate some earth, some topsoil in that, because just a couple days ago we had a big heavy rain. We got about 2¼ inches of water over the course of the day, which at first made me really nervous that the garden was going to be flooded and all just run away, but it didn't. As a matter of fact, that water was captured and then soaked into the earth, which is why I think we can have some of these beautiful trees back here. So that's something you always want to study when you're working in gardens and working on things like permaculture, right? Is how water moves across the piece of land that you're working on, or your property. So I'm gonna go grab the tiller and get as much done as I can in this little window. I'll take a break, I'll fold the dough, then I'm coming back. I got pine straw to spread, I got drip irrigation to install, I need to prune up that giant Japanese maple that's starting to shade out one of my beds. Anyway, here we go. Okay, so remember I told you about this little tiller here? This guy is neat. This guy is neat. So we have a big tiller, right? Look at this giant thing over here. And it's big and wide, and that's what I was using for the other beds when I first started digging in this clay down here. But then my dad was like, I think it might be too big. It's real slow to turn, real slow to move. So he brought down this little tiller, and this guy is really neat. So we're gonna get a chance to fire this guy up. Basically, the process of the little tiller is you let it run across the top, and then you kind of pull it down and back while it's tilling, and it definitely can get into the clay. The reason I wanted to do this today, and it is a bit chilly, I think we're enjoying our blackberry winter right now. We had that big rain, and so the ground is still a little soft. I didn't want to get it right after the rain when basically down here was muck and mud, but you can see already, just in a couple of days, ground's starting to crack. That's how it goes here, right? The clay here is either like, I don't know, pudding, or it's like desert, honestly. So I'm gonna till this stuff in and throw down some topsoil. Let's do it.
And that is beautiful. Everybody dies frustrated and sad, and that is beautiful. They want what they're not, and I wish they would stop saying dibbity dog doggy ding dang dibbity dibbity dog doggy ding dang dibbity dibbity. World destruction over an armature, and do I need apostrophe D need this?
Whew. Feels good. So, when doing something like tilling, I know there are people out there that are like, no till, don't till, whatever. I'm just experimenting, we're just trying things out. And it's beautiful out, it's crisp and cool, but I'm still breaking a sweat. I think there's really something to be learned in moving earth. If you haven't moved earth, if you haven't shoveled gravel or moved large rocks, it's such a real thing to feel. So even if it's in a small way, moving a potted plant or something, move earth. And you should touch earth with your hands, with your feet. It's good for you. Anyway, so I wanted to show you what we're working with here. So when you start to dig down in ground that's been rushed with water and drained, and rushed with water and drained, rushed with water and drained, for storms over decades and decades, in Georgia at least, where we are, we have this clay. I remember going to other places where the dirt was brown and thinking, they got weird dirt. But now I know it's because basically this is clay. So when you're looking at stuff like this, this is what the entire ground under you is doing. So, and you can see this chunk of root there that's made its way through, old root. But very, very firm, very hard to get into. You can see that it's not yet crumbling. That's because I wanted to wait a couple days after the rain and not too long, because then this will turn into rock when the moisture is taken out of it. So basically what we're trying to do is take any bit like this, or what I was doing after the tiller just would run right across the top, it would hardly dig in. So I got in with the shovel and really got down about, I don't know, 10 inches or so, and I pried up big chunks of this. And then I went back and tried to break those chunks up as much as possible. Eventually you get down to a whole bed of stuff that looks like this. So then your job is to go in and try to incorporate things that are going to encourage that to break apart into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, whether that's with a hoe or a hard rake or a shovel. I've used post hole diggers. I mean, you can do it in many different ways. And then of course I went back over with the tiller. And I incorporated something here that a friend of mine just introduced me to. He said, you know, if you have logs and wood sitting around on your property, what you can do is bury them deep in the ground and then put your bed on top of it. And that over time, that wood will decompose into just black deliciousness, good for plants and roots and soil. So I tried to take that into a little bit of consideration. Intuitively, that makes sense to me. Trees are drawing up, doing all kinds of things, drawing up sugar and minerals and secondary metabolites. They're doing all kinds of things. And when they're either felled or when they fall and we chop them up or a storm comes or whatever, we take those pieces of wood that are basically just compounded carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, I mean, all these things, right? And we burn it, or we sit it out, or eventually if you just let it be, it'll turn back into earth. And really that's what topsoil is, isn't it? Topsoil is the stuff that sits on like a forest floor when the trees drop their leaves and needles, and when they fall and die and turn into food for other life. Topsoil is made over thousands and thousands of years, and it can be gone. I mean, it can be ripped up and destroyed in just a couple of generations. So anyway, I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, but what I'm trying to do is make this clay softer so that when plants are trying to send down their roots, they don't have to contend with running into things like rocks and big chunks of hard clay, which is basically rock. You might have noticed I was pulling out rocks this big, chucking them to the side. This also gives you an opportunity when your shovel runs into something, you go, what is that? And you dig it out and you go, oh geez, an old piece of concrete or an old, big old piece of quartz or something. I mean, just stuff that's been down there for a while. No reason to move, I guess. But as you take those things out, you create more space. And that's ultimately what we're trying to do, like in beds as bodies, right? When you think of like hitting your bed, it should have that kind of thump, thump, thump sound. And what you're providing it space. You're making the soil looser and more full of nutrients for all sorts of things to live, not just your plants. You want beetles, you want moths and larvae and all sorts of things. I mean, there's actually too much stuff to count in healthy soil. So anyway, let me kind of show you what happened here. So if you look at the ground right next to that, now don't get too excited, right? This kind of looks like a bed. It needs a lot more work, and we're certainly going to keep adding things on top of it. What I put in today were 3 bags of topsoil, which is stuff that you can buy at your local nursery or plant store. I put some of that stuff in. Oh, so what I did with the wood, I took some of our mulch and I grabbed a wheelbarrow of it and I brought it over and I tried to get it as deep down as possible and incorporate it with the clay. It's sort of like, I guess, reverse mulching. I'm just gonna give it a shot because all of that stuff is water's gonna run through it over and over and over, and it'll just decompose into black stuff. And I'm hoping that that black goo will also help sort of condition the clay and make it softer and more receptive. Now, it's not that I'm just pulling up the clay and getting rid of it. Like I said, if you look around, those with deep roots are certainly drawing things from the clay. The clay's full of minerals and all sorts of stuff. But if you look, that is how hard it is to get into the ground, right? Moving earth is extraordinarily difficult, but we can do it. When they talk about moving mountains, now watch this. Right. That's the key. Now we can get, and see, this is really the illusion of a bed, because underneath is a bunch of those little crackly rock things that I couldn't break down any further without breaking my back. But so what I did is I topped it with this topsoil, and now each time we come in, we'll do a little bit like this, right? We'll pull up mostly clay, a little topsoil, but notice how the topsoil falls in where that clay was. And I just turn it and just give it a couple stabs. And now that topsoil that I just put in at this high is now that deep. And there's some mulch down below it that deep, right? And so over time, your beds are gonna get to be like a foot thick of this black, delicious stuff that plants wanna eat. Of course, we'll incorporate other things, right? We're just now looking at topsoil here. But other things will go into the bed. We'll be putting in stuff like, I'm gonna experiment this year with some of this biochar that I am really excited about. Also compost, all the time gonna be adding compost. I may even buy a few bags of something like mushroom compost at the plant store. Just other stuff that seems to be rotting and breaking down. I'm constantly gonna be using this guy right here. And behind the camera here, there's a load of compost that I've got sort of wrapped up like a burrito in a tarp. Here. And I'm gonna wait for it to get hot for a few days and kind of steam and see if that helps it break down any further. But that stuff is almost ready to incorporate. So we'll incorporate all kinds of things. Basically, this bed, as we grow it this year, is gonna get the most sun in our garden, but it will still be its first year. All the other beds are enjoying their second year, and I think they're already more well incorporated. So that's the plan, just to keep incorporating stuff and to get these beds up to, I don't know, knee high. Eventually you want to be able to just kind of lean in, dig down, get be able to fit a ball or something of roots about that deep in, and then watch it do its thing. Now next, what I'm going to be working on is the drip irrigation. But right now I'm late. I got to go mix my my dough.